we're here waiting for them. They ought to be.
So, if I may, we still have the 10-person limit, I think, in effect as of right now. I don't know if that'll last for the duration of this process, but that might be issue one.
Right up there.
Yeah, I mean, that's in the boardroom. I mean,
It would apply to the lobby as well.
So if there,
well, we do this like at the voting, wait in your car or whatever. But I agree, that's a good way to have those people say on this day, come in here, let's be heard, and take care of those people.
There is the issue we should address, that there is a 45-day mandatory requirement of notifying them before their hearing. We are required to notify them 45 days before their hearing of their hearing. That is a state code requirement, unless they sign a waiver stating they don't care.
Mr. Chairman, well, I was suggesting that I think we can still do that. I'm just saying that if somebody's scheduled, instead of having somebody sit at 6:10, 6:40, 7:10, everybody shows up at 6:10.
Have them wait for 2 hours?
We'll be here for 2 hours.
I think letters have already been sent out with their time scheduled and dates and everything.
I mean, if they would like to show up early, by all means, they're inclined to do so. And if we are ready beforehand, you know, this is obviously a public meeting, so people can come and go as they please. So if we are ready for that point, then we can, you know, meet with them early. But I would say tell them, you know, if we have a 6-hour day and have them show up at hour 1 when their meeting's at hour 6 is kind of cruel and unusual. So I'm not sure if that suggestion will work completely.
So the 45-day notice, we would be, if we send them out in the next week, we're looking at somewhere towards the end of March before, unless they waived.
Yes, everyone. And I've had, I think, 2 people waive so far, and I'm sure most people are fine doing that. It's just contacting them and getting them to do so.
Procedurally, it's a little bit of work.
Yes.
Okay.
To add more, Mr. Chairman, to add more time, would it be feasible to find out everybody else's time availability so that we make sure we don't have any, where we can add more hours at?
Yeah, and 5 o'clock, is anybody else able to do it any earlier if we use some of the alternates to make some of that happen?
Yes. Yes.
Everyone?
Yeah,
Mr. Rhodes?
The earliest I can probably get here is 4.
Okay.
So I can add an hour, so, because I work remotely as well. I'm not down the street.
Okay. You're pretty flexible. I'm pretty flexible.
I'm flexible.
Very flexible.
Okay, so that's 5 of us, so that gives us enough where we can maybe have a long day or start.
Okay.
We can work it out amongst ourselves. I mean, again, I'm all for maybe coming in here and having a 5 or 6 hour day and trying to get these folks in here and give them their fair time and let everyone be heard.
Okay.
I do think we're probably going to run into more of trying to cut everyone off at their 20-minute time slot. A lot of folks have a lot to say, and we certainly want to give them time to say it, but we're going to have to be very, very much, you know, even if we set a timer, I'm sorry, but this is it. We have someone else to go to. So I think as a group, we all need to decide we're going to do that. One of the things that I want to talk about, we're going to have to look at the schedule. We probably need to each take a look at the names on here, and if there's anyone on there that it would be a conflict here in their case, that obviously we recuse ourselves and an alternate take over.
Yes.
So I think everyone needs to kind of go through and mark that list up and make sure.
That is exactly why I scheduled on the agenda alternate scheduling, not only for any days you might have planned ahead of time that you know you have to miss, but also for conflicts of interest.
Okay.
So if there's any days you want me to note ahead of time that you need an alternate scheduled.
Is there, I'd be interested to see the requirements or related to conflicts of interest.
There's a document, right? And it's-
Yes. Everything is laid out in our manual.
It is, okay.
Yes.
That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
could you direct us to where that's at? And we just
Yes.
spend a minute on that, just so
Yeah.
we're all clear? So while she's looking for that, if I'm hearing you correct, we've got about 31 people. So if we do 20-minute time slots, we need about 11 hours to accommodate those people.
Is it 31 people or 31 properties?
31 properties.
Is-
So that's only, I believe it's only actually 3 people.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, that makes a big difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
good question.
So it's only 3 people, about 31 parcels.
So if we have 3 people with 31 parcels amongst the 3 of them,
Mhm.
that's going to be hard to hear that in 20 minutes.
Right.
So those 3 people, but again, in an effort to be fair to everyone, we've got to draw the line somewhere and be clear. If somebody with more than 1 parcel gets more than 20 minutes.
So they have 20 minutes for each parcel.
Okay.
So that's why I was saying if they have 10 parcels and we wanted to do them all in one day, we would have to sit here for, however long, 20 minutes each
200
parcel.
minutes.
Yeah,
if there's only 3 people, then there only needs to be 3 additional sessions, is what I'm hearing.
Well, it'll be 31 additional 20-minute time slots split between 3
Yeah,
people.
but they would probably prefer to come and do it all at one time, and we probably would too.
But if they take their 20 minutes per parcel, we could be here for 3.5 hours per person. But I hear what you're saying. I agree with you. I mean, if we scheduled those people on 3 different days, we could knock all of those out in 3 sessions. If we give each person a 3, however the numbers work out, if they have 10, 12, 14, whatever, let's set them up for 1 session. Hopefully we can get them in and hear their concerns and go through it in a couple hours, but they have up to 20 minutes per parcel.
Would there be any problem with contacting them and asking that they need 20 minutes per parcel, or whether,
most people have requested more.
Or, yeah.
So a lot more, actually.
I think we almost have to keep it 20 just to keep it across the board fair to everyone, so we don't have anyone.
That's right, exactly.
yeah, I wouldn't cut them off, but if they say, I can do it in something less than that, then
So we need to find 3 days where 5 of us can be here for 3 hours on average, and let's go ahead and get these folks knocked out.
Okay.
So I think as a group, we can get together and try to find those dates. I know that I can find 3 days somewhere that I can carve out 3 hours and get these folks in here and hear what they have to say. And we've got some alternates, so we may even be able to, not everybody has to be here for that. Obviously, we may have 3 days, 1 person may be able to drop off and an alternate take over. Just so it's,
Now, on those days, would you like it to be 3 20-minute sessions in that 1 hour, or would you still like the 10 minutes? I mean, I'm assuming you wouldn't want the 10 minutes in between.
I think if we have
parcels.
1 person with 10 parcels, let's sit down and hear them and be done with it. I mean, it may be 2 hours, it may be 3 hours,
Okay.
but I don't see any benefit in having 20 minutes and breaking for 10, having 20 minutes.
Right.
I mean, I think once we get in the thick of it, we're going to want to keep going. We're not going to want to stop and start.
Okay.
So that being said, I mean, with the 45 days, we're looking sometime in March. We need to all look at our calendars, find 3 days that we can schedule 3 hours each day. It doesn't have to be the Tuesday, Thursday. It can be a Wednesday. It can be whatever. But put 3 hours on that day, maybe starting at 4 o'clock. Let's do it 4 to 7 or something like that. Any concerns with that?
I'm flexible.
Okay.
Okay, I'll find a date.
So that takes care of the additional people. So everyone else is scheduled on the dates that we have highlighted.
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me.
What did we decide about the 20 minutes? I mean, are we gonna instruct people that they need to have, be ready to go in 20 minutes?
Mr. Rhodes, they can't hear you. The people on Zoom. Sorry.
See, I really think we're going to run into just what you said, and that the folks are going to come in here and 20 minutes is not going to be enough for them. And unfortunately, we're just going to have to say 20 minutes is the cutoff. And again, if you 20 minutes should be ample time to make your case on your typical residential property. You know, something more complex, we'll have to decide as a group how to handle that. I mean,
Hopefully you'll know ahead of time if it's more complex.
do you know how many commercial appeals we've had?
I do not. I can get you that number though.
Okay. Because obviously that's going to be a little more intensive and
It has been far more residential though.
okay.
I got a question. Would it be considered that an individual with multiple properties, they come and they sit for 3 hours, and they say, listen, I only need 10 minutes on this property to discuss. Can I take the extra 10 minutes and make a 30-minute presentation?
So carry the minutes over from one property to the next.
Sorry.
So carry the minutes over from one property to the next.
Question. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm thinking we should stick to 20, but I'm throwing it out.
I feel like if they have 10 properties and they're allowed 20 minutes per property and they want to take the 200 minutes, we probably ought to give it to them.
Right.
And I think we'd all agree a residential property, we should be able to hear and make a decision within that 20 minutes. I mean, do you have any on your appeals forms, what most people's concerned are? Because I know we're going to get a lot of, it's just too high. It went up 300%. And great argument, and it did go up 300%, but we've got to see some sort of documentation, some sort of comparables, some appraisal provided by some sort of company, something we've got to consider. And if they come in here and they say, you know, I'm on a 2,000 square foot house on 10 acres and it just went up too much with no documentation, there's really not a whole lot we can hear. If they come in with an appraisal signed off on by a licensed or certified appraiser, again, it's in black and white. It's just for us to take a look at and do we feel like we agree with that appraisal? I think we're going to get a whole lot of misinformation on the property card. So we as a board, how are we going to verify that information? If somebody just says, my house is listed as 2,500 square feet, it's only 1,500 square feet. We have their word versus what's on the property card. We as a board, how can we make a decision on that short of doing a site visit, which is not in our scope of work?
You, the citizen and you both have the power to request a site visit from the assessor at either before or at the time of the appeal. That is something in your power as the Board of Equalization to do. You can also, as chairman, we would like the board to use you as the funnel to discuss with Emily and I what you would like the board to request, whatever documents that you all would like to see, whether that be a property card or any of the assessor's documents, whatever he may or may not have done, whether that be the old property card or his new one, to compare things that he did or did not change. So, you know, maybe you said you can't necessarily trust the property card now. You can look at the old one, see maybe what changed. That could be something you could request. Anything that you think you would want to look at, and you're an appraiser, correct? So you know what things to look for. Any documents that you can request, you can just come to us and we'll pull whatever you need.
So if someone comes in and they feel like there's some misinformation on their property card, they're going to present that to us. And really at that point, it's hard for us to make a decision not knowing if that information is correct or not correct. So am I hearing you correct? At that point, we can take that case, give it back to Bright Minds and say, go out here and do a site visit and verify? Or is that something we as a board, one of the members needs to go do? Or
no, you all do not have to do that. You as a board has the power to summon him to do so.
Okay.
Yes. You have a lot of powers as a board appointed by the court. They're actually listed in here. I marked a bunch of stuff for you all. I can send it all simplified to you so you know your rights. You have the power to make the assessor do a whole lot of things. You have the power to make the commissioner of revenue do a lot of things. You're supposed to have all the documentation you need to make a sound decision.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment on that. Bright Minds, Steve Chastain has probably already reviewed this and rejected it, and that's why it's coming to us. So do we want to send them back to him? Or is there not an alternative of someone else that could do that? And I don't know if that's part of the contract, that are we paying him to do that, or that's already included?
It is included in his contract to be a part of this reassessment process and go through the Board of Equalization process.
So,
If someone comes in here and says there's some gross mistakes on their property ID card, which is going to be the bulk of what we get in here, I feel like. If they come in here in the first 5 minutes and say, my house is only 1,500 square foot, they put a 2 instead of a 1, they got a 2,500 square foot. We have no choice at that time but to put it to the side and ask Mr. Chastain to go back out and double check his math. So we're all understanding that. At some point in time, that information's got to come back to us to make a decision. So we've got to allot some time for that as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. So I think with this is going to loop into another conversation I think we'll have down the line. But that's the timing of getting information to us, because if Ms. Glazebrook and Ms. Lawrence get that information and the main complaint from the appellant is that my information is just wrong, then we have that whatever window we decide on to say, okay, we need Bright Minds to go out, take a look at the property again to make sure that they didn't cause an error. That's the beforehand. We can still get them to do it we can make that decision here, correct?
Yes.
For them to go. So even if we don't get all the information beforehand and they just say it's wrong, we can have the request done the day of the appeal. But I think getting that information beforehand lets us have Bright Minds go out, look at the property, then we have it on the day of appeal. So they can say, property card's wrong, and then we can say, Bright Minds came back and said, yes, it's wrong, or no, it's right.
I believe it is in the contract that he is supposed to do a site visit within 5 days of the request.
Okay.
So if that is done,
So-
then we should have time.
So if he follows the contract and we have an appeal, he's got a copy of the appeal and they say it's some misinformation on the card, then Bright Minds is going to go out there, do a site visit, and either change it and agree or say, no, I feel like I'm correct. And we will have that information on the day of that person's appeal. And if we find something that they still say, no, he's wrong, we're right, which we're probably going to run into some of that. And the other thing we're going to run into, if someone comes in here with a certified appraisal and lays it on their desk and says, I had a certified appraisal come out here and say, no, this square footage is wrong, this grade is wrong, what this breakdown of acreage is wrong. We've got to decide as a group how we're going to handle that, them bringing in a certified appraisal versus what the assessor said. So I just think we're going to run into some instances, and I think if I'm hearing you correct, we as a board, if we decide we want to go out and look at that property ourselves, we can.
Yes, you can.
Because I feel like we're going to run into some of those where it's going to be one person saying one saying the other, and it's going to be hard for us to render a decision without trying to verify it in some form or fashion.
Yes.
So my question on those lines would be, do we have to go out there as a board, as a 5-person board, or can?
No, you actually cannot, because that would be a meeting if it is 5 of you, and you would need to have advertised for that.
Take the public with you.
Yes.
So one of us can go out there and bring
Yes.
that information back to the board.
Yes, and I would schedule that, of course, with the appellant ahead of time.
Mr. Chairman, this issue, this conversation gets to an earlier point about the completeness of applications. And if we don't understand what the issue is before somebody comes in here and they come in here and we're reading the mail, right? It gets, it's not a good use of time. And so I think that we need to have we need to know what the issue is and the justification before people come in so that we can, I mean, if we want to send Bright Minds out ahead of time so that we can resolve it in one meeting, we ought to have the ability to do that.
So what's the total number of applicants with the 31?
I believe it's almost 300.
So if we have almost 300 people and they send in their form with any documentation, it's going to be impossible for us to look at that information, retain it, and remember it on the day of the hearing. So even though they sent it in weeks prior, we're probably going to pick it up prior to that meeting and start looking at it just to familiarize ourselves with it. So where I'm going with that cuts into our 20 minutes again. So I think probably what we're going to have to do as a board is in that 20-minute time slot, we're probably going to have to take the first 2 or 3 minutes, familiarize ourselves with whatever their appeal is, whatever documentation. Even though they send it in weeks in advance, it's no way we can review all of that weeks prior and still retain it when it comes to the meeting.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Is it possible, say the day before we have someone come in, that you can send us the information by email?
Yeah.
And that day before.
For just those schedules.
Just those scheduled for that day.
Okay.
So the day before, we can have it. We can either peruse it on our email or we can print it or however we're going to do it. And we'll have those ahead of time.
They've been told they need to have it 15 days in advance. So if you've got it, I personally would prefer to have it sooner than the day before.
Right.
You don't always know
I'm
what
just
you're.
saying, that would give us some
But that's
time to review it beforehand.
Well, I would like to have all the documentation as soon as we can get it, so that each individual, as we have time, can start looking at it, trying to see what people's general complaints are so we know how to attack it. But I agree one step further. Yes, you've got these 300, but the day before, hey guys, these are the 10 that are coming at you tomorrow. Really focus on these 10, be familiar with them. So when Mr. and Mrs. Smith walk in, we've looked at it the night before. We don't have to waste a lot of their 20 minutes familiarizing ourselves with theirs. And hopefully we've already looked at it and kind of in our mind decided where individually we're going with this so that we can make a quick decision as a board, hear them, listen to them, and go to the next one.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I was more focused on hypothetically, if somebody is not happy or disagrees with the property card and they've not indicated that on their, appeal, then if there ought to be some way to go through and identify those applications that aren't clear about what their issue is, so that we have the possibility of saying, Bright Minds needs to go out and survey the square footage of the house, as opposed to having 2 meetings. Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Does that,
of the maybe 300-ish applications I have, I would say 200 of them do not have additional information. So just to put that into perspective for you, Mr. Rhodes.
that's why I'm asking. That's why I'm focused on it. I can just see us
And at this
wasting
point-
a ton of time.
Yeah, well, at this point, the assessor is not going to go back out to all of those just to get further information for us.
So we're going to be faced with 200 people that come in here with very little or no documentation, simply saying my assessment went up too much at one time.
Yes.
So we'll discuss this as a group, but it's hard for us to really do anything with that.
Yes, I
So
agree.
we're going to have to urge the public, and I don't know if we can put it out on the website even more than you've already done it, and I've seen where you've done it, and I commend you for that, that if you come in here empty-handed, there's really not a whole lot we can do for you. I mean,
I accept any form you'd like to submit it in, mail, fax, email, photos, a map, anything.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, may I speak? Why can't we require that they have a complete package as a condition precedent to us listening?
You could have.
So we ought to do that. We ought to say,
Well-
you need to answer every one of these questions on the form and have backup if you want us to spend 20 minutes with you.
The deadline's passed, and the deadline was the 31st.
Can we kick them out?
If I may,
No.
I think that we're, well, obviously not.
It's just going to be a colossal waste of time.
Well, the goal was to just, the application period is to get people in the door with what their complaints are, and then they can gather their information. They still have time. Some do, not all, because we are fast approaching the first meeting. But the others still do have time, and I'm hoping that this meeting hears, people hear this and say, okay, well, I know I have to at least supply something more than just my application, because if something was wrong, we want to know why it's wrong, and we want to fix it. But if you don't give us anything, we can't fix it. So there's still time for folks, and then I know that we're probably going to have another conversation about that coming up. But yeah, it is vitally important for everyone that is listening right now. Please submit your documentation.
I mean, Mr. Robinson made a very good point earlier, right? He was saying that the COVID and things are difficult, internet and all of that, right? So, I mean, everybody gets a pass, but at some point, to be effective, we actually have to have a basis to make a decision. And it will be a better use of everybody's time if we know what the issue is, so we can request any additional information in advance. And it's not all of the applications I'm talking about. It's the ones where they're incomplete.
That's difficult because it may be a very simple thing that they're asking for, and they don't need maps and charts. And
I have found that some issues have been able to be resolved with Emily Teakle's assistance. Unfortunately, she's not able to do this full time and simply doesn't have the time to assist 18,000 citizens. So, but she has been able to fix small errors for people. A lot of the people calling in have issues like this building doesn't exist, but it's on the card. So I've just, told them to bring photos to you all, prove it's not there, and they can easily fix something of that nature. But
that goes back to my point about the 15 days. If they bring photos, I definitely don't want them thrown out because they weren't here 15 days beforehand.
Right.
That would be detrimental to their job.
Yeah. So, if I may, one more time, just to keep the meeting flowing in the way that it should. And these are really important things that we should discuss. But if I may, we get through the scheduling first, and then we can circle back to Mr. Robinson's concern, because it's important that we get to it. And if we do adjust it now so people have as much time as humanly possible. But I guess moving in the way that the meeting normally does, knock out the two scheduled things first, and then we can kind of roll back through in that one. Not to cut anybody off, but.
Well, I think we need to look at the 45 days out and try to pick 3 dates where we can take those 3 people and give them 2 or 3 hour time slots, however many properties they have. Let's concentrate on those 3 dates, and we all communicate back and forth through email and try to find 3 hours on 3 days that we can make that happen. And it's 7 of us. We only need 5. If that doesn't work for someone, that's fine. Maybe one day will and one day won't. But I think that was an excellent suggestion. Let's get those 3 people in here, give them the 3 hours or however long they need leading up to the 3 hours. That knocks those 31 people out, and then we keep the original schedule from there. In the meantime, if we look at some of these appeals and we feel like you said some of them have been handled prior to coming to us, do you know if maybe there's some more of them out there that we could do prior to taking up more time slots? I mean, back to Mr. Rhodes was saying, if they simply come in here and say it went up 200%, there's nothing that we can do for them without any documentation. Because at that point, it's just he said, she said. We've got to have something to fall back on to say it's either going to stay the way it is, it needs to be a reduction, or hopefully we won't see anything needs to go higher. But is there any way to weed out any more of those, or do you think y'all have handled all of that to this point and that's it?
well, with that logic, I won't know if they're going to turn in documentation or not, since you're fine with getting it the day before. So they have until the day before their meeting, and the last date's the 31st of March. So I won't know until the 30th if those people will turn in documentation. And I know many people do wait till the last minute. I got the majority of these applications on the day before the deadline. So there's that complication. And then the most well-versed person in this county on this, other than the assessor that did these assessments, is Emily Teagle, and she holds many hats right now, and she simply does not have the time to fix these errors, nor is she able to. She's not legally allowed to fix many of these, only you all are.
Maybe along that same line, question to you. I appealed, and after the completion of having the conversation with Stephen Chastain, I received the notice, assessment notice, and it was the same amount as the original one. Absolutely no other explanation whatsoever. And if that's what happened to everybody, the main reason some of them may be coming is to find out why the first one was rejected. So if the manuals or his manual, I think actually states that you can request the results of an assessment, he should have documented why he rejected it, or if the square footage was not what you said, what was it actually, or there ought to be something that could maybe help with the situation of people just showing up because they didn't get an answer the first time.
What I've found when people, of course, a lot of people have asked me that question. Sometimes many people did not receive a change at all. There were some, many did not receive a change, but we found in his notes that there oftentimes were not notes on why. There was no reasoning for us. I'm sure he has a reasoning, but there was no notes left for us to find.
I have a question. Is it possible to reach out to those individuals that responded by email and maybe give them a little about how to prepare for your appeal?
Yes.
And this way, maybe we'll have more success at having a full presentation for these individuals and not have to come back to them.
Yes, of course. Anyone that has appealed so far, turned in an application, if they've submitted by email, they received things in the mail and by email. If they just submitted by mail, they only received something by mail. So everyone has received the same documents outlining the hearing procedure, and they frequently ask questions. But yeah, anyone I have an email address for can certainly, be addressed.
This is how you prepare.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. And by now, most people know to reach out to me or Emily with anything they need, and they certainly have been doing so.
So the applicants, they have to fill out an application. Some of them supplied documentation,
Mm-hmm.
a lot did not.
Yes.
And we're saying that if the way it was voted on before, if they did not supply documentation, they couldn't bring it the day of.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be submitted beforehand. So as a board, we need to discuss and I guess even vote on if we're going to allow them to bring documentation the day of.
Yes. And we can send out mailings, notices to everyone changing that so they are notified of how and when and where to send any of that documentation.
Yeah, I would like to see each and every one at least given that opportunity
Mm-hmm.
through a mailing or email or whatever it is you have to do to say, you sent in an application, there was no documentation to support it. Here's your second chance. Send us some documentation. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot we can do for you. So then we're telling you not once, but twice.
Mm-hmm.
So if you come in here as a taxpayer, unprepared, without any documentation, we're going to certainly give them their 20 minutes, but it's going to be a wasted 20 minutes because it's not a whole lot we can do for you. So
I'd like to turn that into a motion. Somebody second that.
Well, if someone takes the time, a lot of times they just want to be heard, even if they don't have the documentation. They just want to get their frustration out, maybe, and to know that someone at least listened to them. So we can't turn them away. If we still have to listen, give them their 20 minutes.
Absolutely. And we're here to do the right thing, right? And so, I mean, Mr. Robinson was right on. I mean, it's gotten complicated, but at the same time, it's a waste. It's just not a productive use of time if people aren't prepared. and it's actually not getting them where, I mean, it doesn't get the result they're after. It doesn't even start in a place where they get the
She's gonna
result
send
they're
out
after.
another email and let them know to prepare their documentation, how to prepare for your appeal,
Yes,
what to bring, what type of documentation you need. So hopefully, then that's what they will do.
I would just add, though, that in my case, and Olivia, that you and I have talked about this, I was waiting to put my application in when I had all the information, but there was a deadline, and you said as long as you get it in 15 days before, that's fine. In my case, I'm waiting for GIS mapping of wetlands, because that's what my appeal is about, and just doesn't come in yet. So there may be plenty of people out there that are planning to provide the information, they just haven't yet.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, while we're talking about this, I do think that maybe we could shorten that 15-day period. I think that that's kind of the consensus that's along the board, that especially if you have, 2/3 of folks haven't submitted anything, they may be waiting on documentation or waiting to get their appraisal finished, and we don't want to, cut them off because they got 14 days in comparison to 15. But the day of doesn't really give, it comes into that issue where we haven't had time to at least familiarize ourselves with the documentation, especially if it's a lot of it. So I do suggest that we have at least a couple of days in there to have it submitted to Emily or Olivia. They can send it, get it all ready for whichever, meeting date that we have it. That way we have all that information before the meeting, and we're kind of focused on those parcels that are involved, rather than, somebody having this wonderful presentation that they put together and they bring it in the day of, and we have no idea about any of the information. So whereas I do believe 15 days should be cut down, I don't think it should be day of, because that's not fair to them if we're not prepared for them either.
Looking through the manual, I'd just like to add to all of this. I've looked at 3 different appeal applications right here, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to run into. The first one I ran into says property includes RPA swamp, cost per square foot inconsistent with builder quotes. We as a board have no way to know what percentage of that land is in an RPA, what's a swamp, what's buildable, what's not buildable. So has Bright Minds gone back out and looked at this? Did these folks come in and already make this appeal? I don't know how we rule on something like that.
Yeah.
Because as a board, there's no way for us to sit here and know how much is RPA, how much is wetlands. That's going to be the argument. I've got 100 acres and 40 of it's underwater. We can say, okay, we believe you, and we can make a decision based on that. But we as a board have no way to verify that information. We're going to be relying on what the assessor said versus what the homeowner says. Now, this particular person had no additional documentation, no delineation of wetlands, anything to support any of that. So, like you said earlier, we want everybody to come in here and have their 20 minutes and vent, and we owe them that. But back to what Mr. Rhodes said too, I mean, with that, there's really not a lot we can do with it. We can listen to them for 20 minutes if that's what they want us to do, but it's at the end of the 20 minutes, there's not a lot we can do with that. So we will have not wasted 20 minutes because we gave the taxpayer an opportunity to be heard. But by the same token, we have wasted 20 minutes because it's nothing we can do for them. The second one, and I'm just going to go through a couple of them real quick. This applicant put on here buildable lot with a question mark. So it's a 3-acre lot, and they valued it as a buildable lot, and they're saying it's not a buildable lot. Do you have any documentation? Do you have an ALC report saying it will not perk? Do you have any delineation of wetlands saying it's in an RPA, therefore it can't be? That's the kind of information we need these folks to bring in so we can help them. If we, and I want to be clear with the folks watching, if they don't bring in that information, we may be compassionate to what they're saying, but we can't make a decision based on incomplete information. So these are 3 of them right here. The third one I get to, they have actually attached an appraisal. So that person's prepared. we can help that person. We've got a licensed appraiser who has put his or her signature at the bottom of the page saying it's 1,500 square feet, it's 5 acres, a portion of it is in wetlands. We as a board can say, I'm going to take that person who we know did a site visit, they have pictures, they pulled a tape measure. We as a board are going to accept what they say over what Bright Minds said and make a decision. We can help that person. The other two, we can't help them. We want to help them. We want to find a way to help anybody who comes in here. Please help us help y'all. But if you just come in here with buildable lot question mark, there's nothing we can do to help you. And it's going to ultimately be a waste of 20 minutes of their time, and they're not going to get the desired result. If they want to come in here with a report from an AOSC to say it's not a buildable lot or something like that, that gives us all the flexibility in the world to say Bright Minds was wrong, this company's right. Bright Minds was paid, and I don't know exactly what they were paid, but $20 a parcel. This company was paid $450 to do an appraisal. We as a group are going to make the decision. We take this person over this person, make a decision, and move on.
Correct. Mr. Chairman, that was very well said.
Thank you.
That was good.
So, I mean, I agree with both wholeheartedly. I want everybody who comes through that door to get there 20 minutes and be heard and just vent. I feel like a lot of them probably already have vented to Bright Minds and just didn't get responded back to. And I agree with Mr. Rhodes. I mean, if you come in here, you're wasting 20 minutes if you just come in here with a blank piece of paper. Help us help you.
Perhaps this is what you put in out of the some of these examples and explain you need to be thorough. You need to be absolutely thorough. And you play some examples so that they can see the experience, so that they know what they have to do. And then the time is well spent.
Correct.
I think it's some tools available to homeowners, readily available, aerial imagery that they could take, Google Earth or some of the hunting apps, show their piece of property and show the wetlands or the farmland or the cutover land or whatever it is. And if they walk in here with that and say, Bright Mind said, I have 100 tillable acres of farmland, and they can show us a piece of paper with their name on that piece of property, which all the apps do, and say, you can clearly see, then that allows us to go, for $20 a parcel, maybe these people pulled up, snapped a picture of the land and kept going, and weren't paid to sit there and fully analyze that piece of property, pull it up on an app and look at wetlands, farmland, cropland, whatever. I think it's something that simple that everybody has access to, or has someone who has access to it, can bring it in here. That gives us all the room in the world to help you.
I think too, if people have forestry reports, that typically shows where timber is harvestable, and if there's wetlands, they usually identify that.
And there's a lot of imagery out here that shows RPAs, that shows how far the creeks and the rivers intrude onto your property. And they are, in fact, we as a board know that anything in an RPA, if an RPA intrudes onto your piece of land 400 or 500 yards, you still cannot build within 100 feet of that RPA. Then that gives, again, I'm beating it to death, but it's just something they can bring in to help us. If they come in with buildable lot question mark, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what do you want me to do with that?
Right.
Exactly.
So again, going back to what we were saying, when you send out your email or mail, just let them know, give them some examples of what to bring and how we can help them.
Okay.
So that they aren't wasting their time and they aren't wasting our time.
If you could condense that long-winded speech I just gave,
I'll
put it
be-
in that email, I think that would be helpful.
Once I draft something, I'll send it for approval to you all before it gets sent out, because apparently that was an enormous issue this time around. People did not think that I spoke to you ever about anything that's happening. So, which is true about you, Mr. Kellum, and you, Strawn, but
As he first name, and I'm
I didn't mean to do that.
All right, so I think we have agreed that for the folks watching at home tonight, hopefully that will give them some good information that they can help other folks. We're kind of limited on what we can do out in the field talking about this at this point because we are the board. We're not supposed to have these discussions, put something on the website. And then I think through email, we'll try to pick some dates at the end of March that we can have our 3 days to get our 31 people in here. So we've settled that for the most part. So what's the next order of business?
The alternate scheduling, to the best of our abilities anyway. Does anyone have any particular dates they know they are not available?
I will start that off. I do not have any dates right now that I know I'm not available. The only thing that I will say is Sundays is not an option for me.
Okay.
So I think as a group, we can find either more hours during the week or if we have to add an hour or two on a Saturday. But Sunday is not an option for me, and I think that would be ill received by a lot of the community.
Okay.
Sundays are out for me as well.
Okay.
You have listed on here, Monday, March the 29th. Is that going to conflict with the Board of Supervisors, or is that an open date?
Their meeting is the 22nd.
One question I would like to ask to our alternates is to the extent that they are able to attend these meetings. And the reason I ask that, if we had just one, preferably two, but if we had at least one and we got into some of these meetings where it was going every 20 minutes without a break, someone could sit in where somebody steps out. If somebody needed to return a phone call, use the restroom, get a Snickers, whatever, somebody could step in and give them in. So I think it would be helpful to the extent they could be here, have an alternate here, particularly on those long days, if they're willing.
Okay. Yeah, that's entirely up to you all.
Okay.
Mr. Rhodes, do you have any days that you know of you cannot attend?
No, I'm with the.
Okay.
Second.
Mr. Hubbard?
Nope.
All right. Mr. Lawrence?
The only thing I have is I can be here for the first half of the 27th of March, but after the 11 or the 10:40, I have an appointment, so I won't be able to make the rest of that day. But everything else, I'm good to go.
In that case, would anyone, Mr. Gaines, Mr. Hubbard, would you like to volunteer for the afternoon of the 27th?
Yes, I can do that.
Yes. All right.
The 17th, Wednesday the 17th.
All right. Mr. Gaines, Mr. Hubbard, would you like to volunteer for the 17th? Okay. All right, and then as far as conflicts of interest, does anyone know of an obvious conflict of interest they might need to step down from? I know that Mr. Gaines and Mr. Hubbard are appealing, so you would not be able to hear your own appeal.
Are they the only two on the board that are appealing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I know that's going to be a community question, so I just wanted to
Yes.
put that out there.
Mr. Hubbard is currently scheduled for Thursday, the 25th. But as long as the 5 members can attend, that will be fine.
Okay.
Mr. Gaines, we have you penciled in for the 31st, and as long as the 5 members are okay for the 31st, that's a Wednesday, and we're good there. So those are the obvious conflicts of interest. Is anybody's brother or mom appealing on here? Daughter?
I don't think anybody's probably had a chance to look at everybody who is appealing yet, but
Okay.
obviously, if you run across that situation, you need to step down and ask somebody else to step in.
Yeah.
That goes without saying. But one thing I would like to bring up, There have been some questions about things being voted on prior to the board being duly appointed.
Yes.
So just in an effort to make sure we're covered from a public standpoint,
Mhm.
if anyone has any issues with anything that was voted on, let's bring it up now and discuss it and put it to rest. And we don't have to deal with it anymore. So we've talked about the timeframes. We've talked about, can they bring additional information? We've all talked about the dates. Is there anything else out there for discussion that anyone would like to talk about?
I mean, I know that there was a conversation at the last board meeting, I believe, about the oath that we were all okay with at the meeting, and we thought that it wasn't mandatory. I believe that it may be.
It is not mandatory.
Okay.
But as a board, you have the right to make it mandatory. And it simply is just asking the appellant to say, I'm telling the truth. But you, of course, do not have to do that if you don't want.
Any discussion on that? I feel like they're coming in here on their own good faith, want to discuss their case. I think asking that is probably just better left alone. Let's come in, give them their 20 minutes their full 20 minutes to state their case. We as a board, we're going to make a decision what we believe, what we don't believe, what we think has some merit, what doesn't. So I don't know where the oath is going to help that at all. But that's certainly open for discussion. I'm just 20 minutes. I think we all know there's going to be a lot of people who want to go over their 20 minutes. And anything we can do to give them their full 20 minutes, I think is going to be in all of our best interest.
Okay.
Agreed?
Do we need to move and vote on that?
You may, but it's not a requirement.
Okay.
Right.
As long as there's consensus amongst you.
Okay. So the items, all items that were voted on prior to, now everyone has been sworn in on the board and this is our board. Mm-hmm. Is there anything anyone wants to talk about? Was everybody good with the timeframes, the dates, everything that we have in front of us?
Well, I mean, I think that we should come to a consensus on how many days before the information should be here. It is the main one that I know is a hot topic of conversation. So
I would like a vote on that one just because I've heard a lot.
So everybody knows where we are and that's official. So what is everyone's opinion as far as, shortening that 15-day period? Do we want to go to 5 days or shorter than that? Obviously, we want to have it, before the day of, just so we can at least know what we're getting into. Because I don't want to walk into somebody having an elaborate PowerPoint presentation and not be able to take in, they spend 15 minutes showing us what was wrong, and I haven't familiarized myself with it at all.
So I think the question is then if we're going to try to get it the day before, so we have some time to refamiliarize ourselves with it, how much can we shorten the 15 days to get it in here and get it to us in a reasonable time, not counting weekends? So, in an effort to be fair to everyone, let's reduce it from 15 days down to something reasonable. Is it 5 business days that excluding weekends? Would that give people more time?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
So do we need to make a motion and vote on that?
Yes, I would need a motion and a second.
I'll make the motion that we shorten the period to 5 business days from 15 days.
Sure.
All right. Any discussion? All right. Mr. Robinson?
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Kellum?
Aye.
Okay. The last thing on the agenda is member comments, which I think we've been doing.
I would like to take a few minutes because I think it will go far in the public eye. And I know some of you I don't, but maybe just take a couple minutes and tell the folks at home and the other members here who don't know each other just a little bit about each other and kind of their background and what each one of us bring to the table. I think that's going to be helpful because because if I know Mr. Raleigh has a strength in a certain area that maybe I'm lacking, maybe I can lean on him a little more. You know, if we get a particular case of a residential or a commercial or a farm or whatever. So you want to start on the end?
Sure. I'm Trip Lawrence from District 1. I'm the Assistant Director of Finance for the City of Fredericksburg. As far as real estate-based experience, I was in the banking industry for a little bit. Did some real estate lending, mostly on the residential side. I also have a little bit of commercial lending on the back end, as far as real estate-based lending. But yeah, that's
I'm Vinny Gaines. My background, I have been a realtor. I'm also an investor in properties, and I have been for quite some time. A lot of my studies have been basically in the business area, the realty area, and I want to say hospitality area. And this is what I bring. I'm not so new anymore to the King Williams, but I'm getting out of approximately.
Mr. Raleigh?
My name is Douglas Raleigh. I'm a realtor. Been a realtor for a long time with Woody Hall, ERA Woody Hall. Finance, I work with the Virginia Retirement System in their accounting department, certified in rental property, and I'm certified in payroll as well as certified in accounting. I have a finance degree and a master's degree.
I'm Strawn Robinson. I was a realtor for quite a few years, and now I'm in the industrial development and the construction business.
Mr. Hubbard?
Bob Hubbard, my career was in IT systems development and project management, but I've had a side interest in real estate for probably 50 years. I've completed the real estate preparation program and been involved in purchasing and properties and construction, renovation, restoration, which is very different than renovation, relocating buildings, leasing houses, vacation rentals. So it's really just a lot of dabbling in different areas. But been involved with conservation easements, wetlands disturbance, a lot of miscellaneous things.
Mr. Rhodes?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Meade Rhodes. Went to B school. Got an MBA in real estate finance. My background is in construction and real estate development. I currently work for regional, like Texas, Chicago to the East Coast, a multifamily developer. I run construction and I'm a little familiar with real estate.
Daryl Kellum, I guess the reason I wanted to get involved with the BOE, and I thought maybe I could help some of the taxpayers here, is I've been a certified appraiser for 25 years. I started at the City of Richmond Assessor's Office, appraising in the Central Business District and Carytown area, so I have a lot of commercial experience there. Now run a residential appraisal business, doing mostly rural properties, farms, waterfront properties. So I just thought maybe I could come here and hear some of these folks and see if I could find a way to help them through the appraisal process, which was part of what I was trying to drive home with the same documentation I would ask for coming to your house doing an appraisal. Bring that documentation to me, and hopefully we can find a way to help you. One thing that was said that I want to touch on a little bit, in that training session that I'm pretty sure we all sat through, we were advised, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but not to handle properties with easements on them. Does anyone remember that?
I was in the session that we were in.
Yeah. She said not to make a ruling on any properties with easements on them.
Because it's something to do with the state code on the way it's set.
So I'm wondering if any of these appeals, I think we have over 300 properties in the county that have easements on them, if I'm correct.
Are you referring to the land conservation easement?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So many people have appealed over the weekend because of the Farm Bureau email that was sent out. I've contacted all of the ones that noted that was the reason for their appeal. Unfortunately, many people did not tell me the reason for their appeal, so I don't know necessarily if that's their reasoning. But if they did tell me, I've reached out to them explaining that you all cannot change that rate. That is, if they're in land conservation, they're in it. The rate is set by the Commissioner of Revenue, black and white. It's simple as that. And most of the people that have received my notification have withdrawn their applications. Some have not responded yet, but we did receive many applications due to that.
So I'm thinking maybe a lot of these three people that have multiple, maybe some of them have easement properties.
Yes, so the ones that I've been told of, if they have not emailed her back, I have actually tried to reach out to a majority of them, just to tell them, you know, Olivia has sent them an email letting them know, giving them their new property card, and if they look at that and they say, okay, great, then they need to contact me so that we can take them off of the list of appeals.
Right, so it was my understanding in that meeting, and then again, I don't know, so I'm kind of asking a question here, but it was basically if somebody comes in here appealing a property with an easement on it, we have to say, sorry, we cannot help you, we cannot discuss that, we have no jurisdiction over that, so to speak.
Yeah. There's nothing you can do for that property.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I feel like just from people I've talked to in the community that there are a fair amount of those out there that are going to be coming to us. And when we say, sorry you drove all the way down here, but we can't help you, if we could cut some of that off before they make the trip, which it sounds like you guys have already tried to do as much as you can.
Yeah.
You know,
We've already made, I'd say, a substantial cut, about 40.
Okay, good.
So those who usually go and look at the email, I've seen the email, they do drop their appeals.
Okay.
Like I said, unfortunately, not everyone states why they're appealing, so it's making it a little difficult to know who to reach out to immediately.
And we're basically going to put out in an email, and hopefully that will do one of two things. Hey guys, don't come in here unprepared. Either they're gonna drop it, or they're gonna get prepared. And I hope they get prepared. But I think if we put the message out there, don't come in here unprepared. I mean, I can't drive that point home enough because it's nothing we can do. So they've got to have something to back up what they're saying is wrong with their property. And I think we're going to get a lot of them that are the general characteristics, the condition, the age, the effective age, the number of bedrooms, the number of bathrooms. I've heard from a couple individuals about my bathroom was assessed at $3,000 and yours was at $3,500. It's really hard for us to address that. I mean, the misconception about a reassessment is it's not necessarily to determine value, it's to equalize. Equalization is what a reassessment is all about, to treat everyone fairly. If I have a vinyl rancher on 20 acres and you have a vinyl rancher on 20 acres in the same market area, we're supposed to be assessed the same. So again, if they just come in here and say, my bathroom's at $3,500, I don't agree with that. It's hard for us to help them. So again, I'm hoping this is getting out to some of the masses. I don't know how many people are out there, but hopefully it will get out and they will start to spread the word, because we can't do it after this point. We can't have discussions outside of this meeting. And that'll be the last point I'd like to drive home is really after tonight's meeting. If somebody comes up to us in public, we cannot have a discussion with them about this. If you have an appeal, you're going to come in, you're going to have your 20 minutes, we're going to hear you, but we can't discuss it at the food line with you. It's just, you need to just tell them we cannot do it, because that just opens us up, and none of us want that. So that's all I have.
I had just a thought, and it has to do with things we've talked about, maybe like square footage, which could be pretty easy to determine and resolve. But there are a lot of things that the assessor did that was based on his judgment, his knowledge, experience, or interpretations. And if you look at all the tables that are associated with a lot of the variables, there's like 13 tables that include things like dwelling classes, dwelling grade factors, land grade factors. There are over 320 different types of improvements. And if one appraiser may call a building a shed, another one may call it a cottage. It's a big difference. And I'm just curious about maybe the thoughts as an appraiser, how you approach that type of thing, because it's subjective.
Well, what you just said is spot on. You have multiple people going out looking at properties, and what one may call something average condition, one may call it fair condition. There's really no way to overcome that. The way the assessment is supposed to work, and I haven't dived into it, but they're supposed to build a schedule, plug a schedule into a computer. The computer does algorithms, and if you plug in vinyl rancher, 5 acres, average condition, composition shingle roof, brick, whatever, that is supposed to go out and draw from those algorithms and value that property. They don't value each property like an appraiser does individually. They build a schedule, it's an algorithm, but if one house is called average and the identical house is called fair, they're going to be valued at 2 different rates. And there's really no way to overcome that. If Mr. Chastain or someone working for Mr. Chastain, one worked one side of the street, one worked the other, you're going to have a lot of information where one called it a shed and one called it something else. And there's really no way to overcome that. If they come to us and say, again, this is what he's calling a shed, or this is what he's calling average condition or fair or poor, which I doubt we're going to get a lot of those. They're not going to point that part of it out to you. But, you know, again, if they come in with pictures, it at least gives us something to go on. You can at least snap a picture of your house and bring it in. It's my feeling that in order to do a proper reassessment, that you have to physically visit the property. You have to look at it, because one of the most important things in valuing property, residential property, doing an assessment, is condition and effective age. The age is not how old it is, but how old it looks. Because if you've got a house 100 years old and you say it looks 100 years old, when it goes out to the depreciation table, it's going to basically put it at 0. You have to say that 100-year-old house has an effective age of 35, 40, whatever, and have some consistency throughout the county, and then it'll value it. A lot of scuttlebutt around the county about, did they go out, didn't they go out, was it done by drones, wasn't it not done by drones? I don't know, I'm not here to speak on that, but it's hard for me to understand somebody doing it from aerial imagery, a drone, or what have you, to fully ascertain condition, effective age, stuff like that. So that's water under the bridge. If they bring in documentation, here's a picture of my house, you guys can make a determination if it's average or if it's A grade, B grade, C grade, D grade. Then at least we, again, driving the same point home, we've got something to go on. So at the very least, bring in pictures of your house. That's something everybody can do. They can snap pictures with their phone and hold them up and show them to us if that's what they want to do. Does the screen here have the capability to mirror to like an iPhone or something like that if somebody wanted to show us pictures short of bringing it up here, showing it to all of us?
I'm not sure about an iPhone. I would imagine so. It's brand new. It does everything else. I mean, worst case scenario, they could text it or email it to me or Emily on the spot, and we can maneuver.
I just think that that's something short of somebody getting a survey, a wetlands delineation, an AOSE report, a $450 appraisal. At the very least, snap a couple pictures of the exterior of your house.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That would help me greatly to decide effective age, grade, condition, which may have a big impact on their appeal.
While they're here as well, we can use the screen for GIS, Google Earth, if need be.
Does the county have any software now that would allow us to pull up the property and look at it, like any type of aerial imagery? I use Onyx Hunt. Onyx Hunt gives you the name, the address, the property lines, the acreage, and you can zoom in and see any wetlands. Is there anything out there, if someone comes in and they don't have that we could sit here and pull it up for them and at least try to go that extra mile to help them?
I'm not sure of anything other than our GIS mapping, and I don't know the level of specificity that it has.
What is
It's got most of that though. It's got, you can look at the parcel, tax map IDs. You can zoom in on that. You can then click and look at the property card that's attached to that. Problem is, that's the Timmins system that's being converted to the Vision system, and I don't know where they stand with that, but
Okay.
some of that mapping has not been available recently,
Okay.
and property cards either.
It's not my area of expertise, but I can find out.
Do we have any type of broadband or anything here that we can tie into as a board?
Yeah. We have Wi-Fi available.
Okay. Because we could come in here with an iPad, and if the Timmins system is down or not working properly, I mean, if we can project to the screen or pull up on an iPad one of the apps that's out there, you know, I think that would be very helpful. And again, it may only be a handful of properties, but when those folks come in, if we can offer them anything to try to find a resolution to help them, I want us to dispose every tool that we have available, so that if they walk out here mad, at least maybe they're kicking the curb out. They're going, at least they tried. They did everything they could do. And, you know, and I think that's what we all need to hope for, is to be able to look every person in the face and say, we did all we could do for you. If you didn't bring in enough information, we still tried to take it one step further and help you. And we did all we could do. At the end of the day, if we have, as a board, your house was at 150,000, it went to 300, and we think it's worth it, then it's just, that's what we think it's worth. You know, we're going to be the bad guy anyway. But if the ones that come in here with the larger acreage parcels and land that have wetlands, swamps, whatever, and don't have any type of documentation, because it is costly and there's time frames associated with getting that, as Mr. Hubbard said, if we could pull it up and at least, hey, I see your piece of land and I see what you're talking about, that's going to help us with their decision.
Mr. Chairman, may I suggest something?
Ma'am?
May I suggest something?
Yes, ma'am.
The app that you have, are you able to get it on a website?
I am.
So that actually, what I could do for each meeting, I could come in here a little bit earlier. And if you give me your login information, I can actually pull up each person that we're meeting with that day. And I mean, I can hide it so that nobody can see it. But when they come up, I can actually just already have it pulled up. And then that way it's already there.
Yeah.
If you want to.
I feel like
Is this
that.
actually the county information that you're looking at?
GIS.
Sorry?
It's based off the GIS.
Yeah.
But is it the county property card? It's exactly what they've looked at home when they come in.
Yeah, some of the apps that I have and that I look at, it's the county GIS. It shows the property line, the owner, their address. You can zoom in and really, it's pretty sophisticated as far as you can zoom in. It shows topography lines on it. It shows wetland lines on it. So I know from being an assessor that when you go out and do a 100-acre parcel, you're not walking a 100-acre parcel. You're not walking a 10-acre parcel. You're pulling up in front of the road, you're snapping a picture of it, and you're going to the next one, because you're paid per parcel, and it's not a lot per parcel. So when you get past a subdivision lot with a house on it, something bigger than an acre, they're really making an assumption that the rest of that acreage is good, usable acreage. Again, we're not here to appraise everybody's property for them, but if they bring in documentation and we can have this app and pull it up, and their argument is half of my property is in a floodplain, that app's going to tell us they're telling the truth. Let's make a determination. And at least we've gone the extra mile to try to help these people in the 20 minutes the best we can. We're prepared with tools to help them, who aren't prepared to help themselves.
Like it.
May I ask for clarification on one thing I believe may have been determined before you and Mr. Robinson came on?
Okay.
Will you be accepting any appellants through Zoom, or is everyone required to attend in person? Thus far, I believe I've only had one, maybe two people state that they would like to attend virtually or via conference call. I don't know what she necessarily meant by that, but what is your preference? What are your requirements?
Well, I think we have a lot of absentee owners in this county.
Mhm.
And I think for someone to drive hours for a 20-minute presentation, we probably should offer those people, if they're absentee owners, the option to do a Zoom meeting.
Okay.
That's my opinion. We can obviously vote on that as a board, but I think they should be afforded that opportunity. Again, it's a lot of people north own a lot of property in King William. I don't know what the percentage is of those people that are appealing, but if we've got a handful, I'm all for it. Again, I want this board to come out as trying to be as helpful, and we're working to listen to the taxpayer and try to find a way to help them. We're not trying to find a way to not help you. We're trying to find a way to help you.
Okay.
And if you help us, help you. So yes, I would say I would like to make a motion to accept Zoom meetings.
Okay. Any more discussion? Mr. Rhodes?
Sure, yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Kellum?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Aye.
Okay.
Then one last thing. So I know we talked a lot about people being able to submit documentation a little bit earlier now, or I mean a little bit later. Is that still going directly to you, or should it go to Ms. Claysbrook? Or?
It should go to Ms. Claysbrook now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Are we going to post something out on the website and Facebook page with that information on there? I guess that would go along with what you need for your appeal.
And in the paper as well.
I'll have to check with the county administrator as far as posting in the newspapers, but if that is something that you all would like, then I'm sure that is fine. Is that something that you would like? We usually post in the Tidewater Review and the Country Courier. I believe that the Country Courier is this coming Wednesday. Tidewater Review might be the following week. I get their schedules mixed up, but
I think if we could get something in the Country Courier and the Tidewater Review, that's going to reach a lot of the folks who do not have internet or computer access.
Okay.
And maybe if it's properly worded and we put it in there about in a professional way, we can't help you if you're not prepared to help yourself. Maybe that will get those folks better prepared who are coming, or the ones who are just saying it just went up too much. Maybe they were like, hey, I don't really have a whole lot to go on here.
okay. And again, I would like these all to be proofed and approved by you all before sending.
Okay.
If that's okay.
And the email list, I guess you have built, is for all 7 of us. So everything that goes out goes to all 7.
Mhm.
And I guess it's going to be crucial in the days moving forward that when you send them out, we all respond and we start to see which direction we're going. And I guess we need to look at those 3 dates where we're going to try to get those 30 people in here and decide on that here pretty soon.
I believe
Along that same line, though, I'm just thinking, what happens if people call because of illness or whatever and can't make their appeal date and time? Should we allocate other time possibly because you don't want to be caught with getting the call and don't know what to say. You either, that's too bad, or here are the options. Just something to think about. We don't have to decide tonight, maybe.
Yeah, well, a very good question. If somebody calls up and says, I tested positive, I'm in quarantine, I think we have to offer them some alternate times or dates.
So that I think that goes along with the Zoom or the conference call in. So we have that option, but obviously if they're too ill to do that, we don't want them to push themselves too much. So they do have the option to be represented by someone else. It doesn't have to be an attorney or anybody like that. I think you just pick another representative. So if they were comfortable with that, they can always send a surrogate, but we can have that conversation, I guess, later as well and kind of decide if we need to have an overflow date near the end of March, because this has to be done by the 1st of April, correct?
we sadly don't have an overflow date as we have the 31st scheduled, so we don't have room for an overflow. So we probably should think about it now.
Okay.
And the only days we don't have scheduled are Fridays. So those would be the days that you were referring to for the 3 hours. It would probably need to be a Friday and another Friday maybe as an overflow. Is anyone opposed to a Friday evening?
Well, I think we decided we're gonna pick 3 days to hear the 31 people.
Okay.
So that gets those 31 taken care of, and then we have the original schedule. If we have some overflow, I think there is where we could add an hour to the front of a meeting on a couple dates to hear some overflow versus adding a Friday or another Saturday. I think everybody here probably would rather, instead of 6 o'clock meeting, have a 5 o'clock meeting. If we've got a couple people overflow, that would be a date we could plug somebody in.
Mr. Chairman, so looking at the schedule, I don't know because it's kind of all jumbled. There are some Wednesdays, some Mondays already penciled in with people. Y'all have not approved those days. I mean, we've all been talking about them, and if y'all are okay with it, then that's fine. I'll keep them. But there are the 2 Sundays at the bottom that are marked for all day for only two people that have a lot of parcels. Those are not counted in the 31.
Okay.
So I know that y'all had said you didn't want to do Sundays, so I can add those to the 31 and try to find another day to add those. But
I would like to see add some other days other than a Sunday to the
That's fine.
schedule. Now, you said you've got some Mondays and Wednesdays already penciled in,
yes, that's on the schedule right there. All
So-
of them.
and they're not part of the 31.
Yeah,
No.
all of the available Wednesdays and Mondays are penciled in. The only days left that we don't have on here that we could put on here are Fridays at the end of March due to the 45-day rule.
So that would, I mean, the other option is during the day on one of those weekdays. Because that would allow you the time to, if I'm looking at it right, that's what? 8-hour day. For one of the appellants in particular. So that would be an all day during the day type situation. Because we obviously do want to, skip over that Sunday. I think that's a consensus. We don't want to encroach on that. So I think that those two, they were scheduled for Sundays, would have to be all day during a business day or a Friday, which would still technically be business day, but
So of the original dates, we had penciled in the Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays over a 6-week period. Those 6 weeks we've now filled in
Yes.
Mondays, Wednesdays,
Yeah.
6 to 9.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, like we were saying before, some of them are in easement and either they haven't gotten back to us or we don't know that their property is in easement. And some of these people who have a whole bunch, all of them could be in easement. And if they are, then sadly, we're not really going to know till they get here.
So you're feeling like over a 6-week period, we're going to have meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 6 to 9. Okay. And those are penciled in, the Mondays and Wednesdays.
Yes. So
Have those dates been scheduled?
No, we have not reached out to those people, letting them know that we have given them a time frame. If you look at the schedule, the ones that are darker, you can't really tell. But the Tuesdays, the Thursdays, you can tell they're darker than the Wednesdays.
Mhm.
Those are the ones that we've already sent out. They know they have a time. But the Wednesdays, the Mondays, I don't think we didn't send out the Sundays either. So.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's just a lot of people and not enough time.
But if we add that extra hour, say to 5 o'clock, then that will give us some extra time is here as well.
Yes, so for people who have, they only have one parcel that they're coming in for, I could easily add them
For the,
for
that
an hour.
Of the time we have already have.
Yes.
already have allotted.
I'm looking at one right here, just like on the Monday, the 29th. I guess that's what it says. It's 4 scheduled. If we added an hour on a couple other days, we could knock that complete day off.
Right.
And we could condense them by adding an extra hour, and we could, so we would not hear so many times.
Right.
A little bit longer, and if we moved up to the 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I would rather be here longer than more days.
Right.
I think everybody probably would. So let's try to see if we can get those folks in the 5 to 6 slot and knock out the Mondays and Wednesdays.
Okay.
See how many drop off, how many we have left over, and if we can add 5 to 9 instead of 6 to 9 and accommodate them on Mondays and Wednesdays and keep our 9 to 3 on Saturdays. And if we need to add more time, let us know. Maybe as a group, we'll find 5 of us that can,
On a full day.
do a full day.
Okay.
And I personally would not be opposed to doing a couple full days and getting this thing knocked out if 5 of us can do it. I mean, that's an 8-hour day. We're going to get 24 people in here.
Versus the 4 each evening.
Yeah.
4 to 6.
Okay, so for example, March 13th, I still have like 2 spots available. That's all day. That I could take somebody from another Saturday that we could get out of here at, 2 o'clock. I could add those people and make an all day and then the other days at 2 o'clock.
I would be in favor of that. Pulling 1 or 2 full days if we need to get these people knocked out.
Okay.
And
We do have to have a set schedule and advertise ahead of time, though. That is a requirement by code. So whatever we can't go back and forth with the schedule. So we would have to set this and advertise it
When is our deadline to set?
immediately.
That's-
That's why we published the dates ahead of time and started scheduling them, because that was a requirement.
so it sounds like to me, we need to go ahead and vote on a board to do it from 5 to 9 instead of 6 to 9. And that gives you 6 weeks of 2 days a week, an extra hour each day.
Okay.
And we work it out as a board, who can be here, who can. It might be, some can be here for an hour or 2 and then somebody take over. We'll have to work that out as a board.
And note that if an alternate hears a case and that case has to be continued, that same alternate has to hear that case when it's continued, has to make the decision on that case.
So I make a motion that we just add 5 to 9 to the Tuesdays and Thursdays and leave Mondays and Wednesdays and any additional hours on Saturday alone right now. And if once those slots fill up, if we find we need to add something else, we will.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Lawrence?
Aye.
Mr. Riley?
Aye.
Mr. Robinson?
Aye.
Mr. Rhodes? Mr. Kellum?
Aye.
All right, we'll do some more maneuvering tomorrow, contact some more people in the conservation. And
Is there anything we as a board can do to make y'all's life easier?
you could do some advertising of your own. That'd be nice.
That's probably a slippery slope as a board.
I suppose that's true.
I guess because we're not really supposed to have conversations about this outside of this. So
Well, I was referring to maybe sharing whatever we put out
Oh.
and whatever ads we place. But
I think as a board, we could probably proof the ads that you guys put together and maybe add or subtract something from them to all feel that we're getting our point out there that, again, don't come in here unprepared.
Mhm.
And these are some things you can do to prepare. I think if we put that in the proper format, we will all agree on that. We'll put that Country Courier and Tidewater Review, and hopefully we'll get good results from that.
And the website?
yes.
I believe we got a lot accomplished in one night.
I think so.
Any further discussion on any matters? Meeting adjourned.